GDLS Canada, an industry leader dedicated to supporting our customers and the community.
First time I saw a lacrosse stick, I was in grade 10. Peter Black was my phys ed teacher, and he was playing at the time for Vancouver, and so he would he had sticks, and during physical education we'd go play some field lacrosse, and that's the first time I saw a lacrosse stick. And then that summer I grew up in Vancouver East by Granby Community Center, and I walked in the arena and there was a practice going on. First practice, the ice was just taken out, and the goalie, John Lewis, I went to high school with and played soccer with him and everything else, kind of said, him and the coach said, "You want to try this?" I said, "Sure." You know, I'd already had a little bit in grade 10 high school field lacrosse, so I picked up, got a stick and made some pads and went out and played. And most of the coaches at that time were all Vancouver players, WLA players, Jack Barber, Billy Barber, Chisholm, Donnie Boyd, and these guys, and a lot of guys that went from our team went to the Roadrunners, Richmond Roadrunners Junior A. So I played a couple years Junior B, and then I went and played for Richmond Roadrunners. So I'd never seen a WLA game until I think the year before I got drafted. You know, and I just played East Van lacrosse, and then I made the Roadrunners one year, and then I got drafted by third round by the Adanacs, and so I didn't have anybody outside the guys I played with. You know, and I played with a lot of good players. The Taskers were at the end of their career in Richmond, and that's I saw them, and Penders, all the guys that Greg played against the Mann Cup against. And then I got to play against, I think, new Burnaby team, and I played, I think, 1 year against Danny when he was there. It must have been his first year in junior. But it was basically, once I picked the stick up, I fell in love with the game and spent a lot of time in the box with my friends, and shooting the ball against the boards and trying to pick the game up through watching and playing in junior. And so I think I saw one game at the Forum, WLA, that was it. He was a phenomenal offensive player. He was the Wayne Gretzky of the game, you know, and every time he got the ball, it was potentially a goal. I played junior against him when he first came up. He was a year younger than me, and we got to play senior. I became his shadow when he got the ball, and I'd rather have Kevin with the ball, because then I could more or less control. When off the ball, I thought he was more dangerous because he had such a quick stick. He'd stand there and the ball's coming over your shoulder, and I'm looking at his eyes and I don't see anything. Next thing, the ball's in his stick and out of the stick before I even get a chance to hit him. So I preferred him with the ball, and I know that Bob Salt used to get mad at me because he didn't like him. He didn't like Kevin carrying the ball, but I thought he was fast. He was offensively the best player in the game with a stick.
Very deceiving. Very deceiving
and strong. I don't think people credit how strong he was because he wasn't that big. And there was a few times, and him and I, you know, I got to play in '86 on the field, national field team with Danny and Kevin. And Kevin and I had never really talked until that time, and we do have debates about if he ever beat me, those times he got around me, I would grab his sweater and pull him down, take the penalty, and just to get it in his head that you're not going to beat me. And I remember watching Kevin play, and he did this to everybody. He'd say to people, when I get the ball, I'm going to score. I'm going to beat you and score, right? And he'd get in their head, so I tried to get in Kevin's head. And I think he was telling me when he got inducted to the Hall of Fame, he made a comment about me. He thought his mom would teach him how to dance, but I taught him how to dance. So Kevin was a phenomenal ball player. And I remember one time we were in Victoria, and I'd never seen a reverse backhand. And he did a reverse backhand because when he was coming at me right-handed, I tried to get his stick over here, so thinking that he's out of the shooting position. And all of a sudden, he did a reverse backhand to Bob Cool on the far crease, and he was open. And I don't remember if Greg was in net or John Lewis, but it was like, I know it was you, because I walked in net and I asked Greg, now what do we do? We'd never seen that before, but
No,
when he
I'd
did
never
that
seen it
reverse
before.
backhand, and Bob Cool standing there and hits him in the stick and open net because Greg's out waiting for Kevin to shoot. And I went to Greg right away and I said, now what do we do? No, he was a player that was enjoyable to watch, and it was a player from my point of view that I really enjoyed playing against him. It was I could really focus and know that you're playing against the best player in the world, one of the best players in the world. I'd rather check Kevin than check Danny Wilson, because Danny kept running, and he liked playing without the ball, and I'd rather have defending against the ball. I'd rather have the guy in the ball because I could control it more. Danny was the kind.
would run.
Danny would take the ball. And again, I think Danny's one of the best offensive players in the game without the ball. And he would get the ball, and he's already passing the ball when it's coming to him. He's already passing it to the next player and then cutting the net. So as a defenseman, how do you control that? Because now all of a sudden he got rid of the ball, but the ball's coming back to him. He's taking 4 steps and the ball's coming back. And Danny was an off-ball player that he could play with the ball, but when he's off-ball, you couldn't defend against him. No, that's no.
You're not going to tell us that one?
No, no.
You don't
I could tell it. That doesn't matter. That when I was playing for the Adanacs, my in-laws moved to Victoria. And that was around the time that the Alexanders bought a sporting goods store, started a sporting goods store in downtown. So when I was over there one weekend, we were walking in town and doing some shopping with my in-laws and my kids and my wife, and I decided to go into the Alexander Sports Store to see what was going on in there. So I went in, and they had a lot of lacrosse stuff, a lot of lacrosse sticks and everything else. They saw who I was. They told me to leave the store. And I said, well, I'm here to look at sticks. I'd like to maybe buy a stick. And they said, no, you can't buy anything here. And they you got to leave. And and they getting a little voicey about it. And I thought I better leave. So when I walked out the door, Norm Baker and a couple of the other Victoria team members showed up. I guess they phoned them, and then they were all upset that I was there, and I, blah blah blah. So I told them. I said, well, hey, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm trying to think fast instead of, having a pushing match in downtown Victoria. I said, I just moved here. So they thought, oh, they left me alone, and I left. And by that time, I found my wife and my in-laws and my kids, and we walked home. I told my wife about it, and she says, I told you not to go in there. And I said, well, what it was. And then we got home Sunday night, and it was just before you had voicemail and everything else. We had an answering machine, and there was about 8 messages on Saturday and Sunday from Sohan Gill, our general manager of the Adanacs. I guess Victoria, they had already, players had told the management team there, so they had already phoned over to get a trade for me because I had moved to Victoria. And Sohan says, what the hell are you doing? I said, well, it's better than having to push a match downtown, the Adanac versus the Victoria team, right? So it got me out of trouble. But Sohan was trying to figure out what the hell was going on. He was all concerned that I had moved there, right? So
Thanks
it was
for
fun.
telling that story.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful story. That's a great story, and it just shows you so much about how it was, how the rivalries were back then.
We would practice a lot. Early in the season, we'd have scrimmages, but mostly we practice on stick skills. We play man up, man down, a lot of that. And but mostly we didn't have many scrimmages after the season started. We would do breakouts, and you would have 3-on-2 breakouts and that sort of stuff. But as far as scrimmages go, after the team was made, the scrimmages kind of went away. So I didn't have to get frustrated playing against Danny, but I remember the offensive guys would get upset because during our practice, we would play man up, man down, power play, short man. And some of the offensive players didn't wear all their pads for practice, as Danny said. So they'd have their gloves and helmets on, and sometimes they'd have their shoulder pads, but they wouldn't wear their. Well, I played the back of the zone or the diamond of the short man, and I'd get upset that I wasn't allowed to hit them because how do we practice when these guys are practicing moving the ball? And I remember hitting a few of the guys on the crease, and they get mad at me. And I'm going, well, how do I get better if I can't hit you during, make it a game activity, right? You practice like you play, right? And I remember Mark Velaston one time, he got mad, punched me in the head because again, it was all, again, we didn't go at it, but he was upset. And I said, well, put your damn pads on, right? Because I need to practice as much as you need to practice. Well, I remember, when I got drafted in '76, and our practices in '76 were like Danny's old school. They were hard practices and everything else. And all of a sudden, about '78, '79, when Owen Gill and Bob Salt came, and we started, the players that were drafting and were from teams like the Burnaby team, where they had this different way of practicing with the gloves and helmets and that sort of stuff. And we changed a bit. And we started getting into, they were very successful in Burnaby with what the management team and the coaching staff was doing there. So we started adapting to that. And I think our practices became a lot different. Once, I'm going to say about '78, they started changing. They started going to, the game's evolving and practice evolved and the coaches evolve. So I think our practices, from when I got there in '76 were way different. And we did have fights in '76, and Greg, some of the practices we had some guys that didn't like getting hit or that. But I don't recall outside of Mark punching me in the head one time that we really had a fight. Now Mark's my best friend, right? So we were friends after, but he didn't like the way I was playing, and but you practice, you have to get better at it. For me, Bobby, he used to know how to push my buttons. If we had a bad period as a team, he'd come in the dressing room and he would say stuff about me to get me pissed off. And then I'd go out there and I'd even, to prove him wrong, I didn't think I had a bad period, I'd even play harder. And sometimes he got me going so bad that I get so frustrated with him because I couldn't recall having a bad period. But the whole team had a bad period, and he would push my buttons, and I would go out there, and then the first couple guys I saw, I would go at them pretty hard if they had the ball. And sometimes I think it was to motivate everybody else, right? But I think he was the right coach for us for the '80 team and that bit of an era at the end of when he was with us at the end. I think he grew as a coach, as a person, because when he first came in, we had, some of us had played against him. My rookie year, I played against him.
So did I.
Right, and my first, to show when I got drafted, we had a game at Grandview Community Center, first exhibition game against the Burrards. And I wanted to show the coach I wanted to be there, so Bob Salt was on the floor. I intentionally went up and got him to check me. And he hit me, and I went, oh, that hurt. And then the next shift, I didn't go to Bob, I went to Frederickson, and he hurt me more. So I went back to Bob. But I thought Bob was the right coach for us for that. And he got better. I thought he got better every year. And I think you got to give credit to Owen Gill. He was the one that him and Bob built this team. And I think they did the right thing. They drafted players, good players that were good role players. And traded for some players that got, and found some players like Lindsay, playing Junior B, and next thing you know, he's on our team. And
Gordy
Quilty, right? So not only did they draft well, they also found players in the woodwork that other teams had missed. Tim Kelly was another one.
There's another one, yeah.
Yeah, that so they built themselves could have been a dynasty, but we were good for a few years, not just 1980. We were building up to that '80 team, but we were good after that. But then as you get older, people drift away and find other things to do, and I think that's what Sowen foresaw what was happening in Burnaby for the juniors, and he translated that into our team by drafting, Matt Aiken, the Ray Mattinson, players out of Burnaby, out of that era of when they were, playing in the Minto Cups and that, and then we got Danny Wilson, that was just icing on the cake, and that our team changed from the guys that played when I got there. It was a different style of lacrosse, and you either had to adapt to it or you went and played for one of the other teams that played old style still, right? The team transitioned. We moved. You know, Jimmy's role up till then was get the ball and shoot. And, you know, you talk to his partner on that side of the floor, he just says, my job is to give Jim the ball, go set a pick for him, and Jim shoots, right? And the Danny story is that you talk to Jimmy, after a while, Jimmy's going, the guy's always open. I can't shoot the ball. So he's upset he's not shooting the ball as much as he liked because he had to pass the ball because Danny's open, right? Every team, every era did offense, defense. If you're losing by 4 goals and you need some goals, everybody went offense, defense, right? Yeah. And if you're winning, you played 3 lines, right? But there were players out there that, you know, just couldn't play defense, so they would play strictly offense, and there'd be one guy going out the back door when they came in. And we had players like that in our team too. Right? But for the most part, the 80 team, guys played both ends of the floor until you needed to shorten the bench. Most of the guys that we played with loved being an Adanac, loved being with the part of the team. We were that tight.
Yeah,
right?
It's different now.
Yeah, and now you got players that only want to play for winning teams. They want to open the jewelry box at the end of their career and see lots of gold. Certain players that got paid,
yeah,
they kept it pretty quiet. They didn't want everybody to know that one player is getting babysitting money, they called it.
Well, I know you got babysitting money, and I know you got some other
babysitting money?
No. I think it was 79.
And H got babysitting money.
I just heard H told me about babysitting money.
Yeah.
And
he didn't,
and I never got babysitting money. My wife, we brought my wife to the game, then the kids came, or they stayed home, and I paid for babysitter. So I said to Owen, I hear there's babysitting money, and he said, oh no, he denied it. I said, well. H, he gets it. Oh, he told you that? And then all of a sudden, then he says to me, well, how many nights do you need? And I said, well, it'd be nice to Saturday nights, at least the home games, right? And so he says, okay, I'll give you $5 a night or something like that. And it was better than nothing, right? But there was money under the table for certain players.
Not very much.
No, not much. And but I think that's changed today. I think the players in the WLA are getting more money than we ever received. As you know, as Danny said, you're lucky if you broke your stick. I don't recall anybody ever saying, "I'll give you a new stick." I was home that night, fiberglassing it for the next game. The NLL, it's an event. That's how they promote it.
Yeah, and they've got they got cheerleaders. They got the whole deal.
And they don't promote it as the game. It's an event. And you get people coming in, and the original owners of the NLL, that's what they wanted. They wanted 8 game events in 5 different arenas, 5 different cities. And when you got there, the music was loud. They had cheerleaders in between when in between calls. They would get people going, and people went for the event, not for the game. And until you can get a 40, 50 game schedule, I don't think it's going to go. It's going to stay as an event. Philadelphia used to pack that place. Buffalo packed that place. You know, because it was only an 8 game event, but they packed it, and people were crazy about the game, right? So all of a sudden something happens. You lose a few games for a few seasons, and next thing you know, you're moving the team out of that city. But you need deep pockets. And,
you got to have the money.
You know, I remember being in Buffalo. I helped Buffalo for a few years in the NLL, and the owners didn't even know they owned a lacrosse team. They were so busy in with the Buffalo Sabres. But they also owned a flag football league. They played out of that arena. And it was at a meeting that the owner finally said, so they're just not leasing the arena, we own them? So even the owners didn't know about which teams they owned. It was, but they definitely knew they owned the Sabres. And you can't have a home game. I remember in Buffalo we had a home game, and then we didn't have another home game for 3 weeks. Right? How do you get the fans interested if you're not playing at least 1 week or at least every second week at home? Right? And I think you've got to be more consistent as far as the games go, that you got to get more games and you got to advertise and have deep pockets. And I do believe that the game slowly is getting there. The Team Canada 2006 World Games, the lead up to it was I played in '86 as a face-off guy for Team Canada, and I was coaching field lacrosse. And for Coquitlam Adanacs, we had a field lacrosse. There's a league actually out here and everything else. And it was after the '94 World Games. I ran into two players at a tournament. They, the local guys played in the league also that I coached in. And two of them just got back from England and said, "You got to apply for the head coaching job, Team Canada. You got to change stuff." They weren't happy about I guess, how the team was selected, and even in '86 it was predetermined how many Western players were going to make the team. So it didn't matter if you were the best player. If you weren't one of the 7, you didn't make it. And I made it as a draw guy, specialty. So I thought about it, and I thought, well, that's not right. I wasn't happy that some players in the West didn't make the team. I found out after the tournament was over. I talked to the president of the Canadian Lacrosse Association, and he told me that we didn't have enough money to bring players from the West out east for the World Games. So I thought to myself, well, after every World Games, you can apply for the head coaching job. So I contacted the Canadian Lacrosse Association and asked them what we had to do, and they said, well, you got to put a program together. We're not just hiring a coach, and the program has to be self-sufficient as far as money. You have to bring all your own money. So I put together a proposal. I started talking to local people about sponsorship, saying if I do this, how do we get the money so players don't have to pay? When I played in '86, it cost us $500 per player, right? And I didn't think a team should be picked on talent, not on money. So my proposal was the players will not have to pay a penny. Outside of, there has to be I think we charged them $35 for a trial camp in each camp, and we held 3, and the proposal was 3 camps, one in the East, one in the Prairies, one in the West. And from those 3 camps, we'd have a major camp, bring the top 50 players in. They would be the ones that we would select from. So there's a proposal from the East and a proposal from my proposal from the West. And they chose our proposal. And so then now I got the job as head coaching job with also the responsibility of raising money to get a team to the World Games. So what I started thinking, okay, the other proposal in the East, I'm going to go meet with them and see if we can't merge the two, because they had to do the same thing. And so we tried to merge it. It didn't work out really well. We didn't raise any money, very, very little money in the East. So I got people here to donate money. We had fundraisers, we had everything. So it worked backwards. We had money for the World Games, then we had to raise money for the next camp, then we had to raise money for the pre-camp, the pre-Worlds and everything else. So we were busy for 4 years, from '95 to get ready for '98. So in '97, the year before, we had the 3 camps that we were committed to. One in the East, one in the Prairies, one in the West. From there, we picked the team, and we went to the '98 World Games. So we raised the money, we did everything, and it was probably the best thing that happened for the 2006 team. And the reason I say that is that what my thought was is that playing the USA when I played in '86, playing against the US in the world in the Box Nations in 1980, and watching them, they're fast. They're athletes that play lacrosse. We are a good nation of lacrosse players that have turned into good nation of lacrosse players who are athletes. You can go back in time. I think you'll find good lacrosse players who aren't very good athletes, and you'll find the good athletes who are good lacrosse players and good athletes. But in order to win, you have to be able to compete as athletes against the U.S. and Australia, because they're big, they're fast, they know the game. It's their game, not our game, especially U.S. So the 98 team, we took players who are good athletes and said to them, you're trying out for a midfielder position. We'd like to put a big stick in your hand, a defensive stick. They have a 6-foot stick, and we'd like you to take this home, practice it, come to the next camp, prepared to try out for a big stick. Because we wanted athletes back there against their athletes on their attack athletes. And Stevie Toll took that to heart, came back, and he was probably the most exciting player in the 98 World Games. And we went into overtime against U.S. and lost in overtime to them. First time that, because Canada's got that close outside of winning in 28 years earlier. What that did for us is all of a sudden, all the way kids across Canada saw Stevie Toll, this athlete, not just a big, like a linebacker playing big stick. He saw an athlete playing big stick and exciting. More kids started playing big stick. So that led us up to the 2002 when we all, in the selection committee, I again got the position of head coach, same format, had to raise the money, we got to go to Australia, and we did the same thing there. And in 2000, and we came silver there in Australia, and so we've now got 2 silver medals. And then 2006 in London, Ontario, all of a sudden our talent pool was huge, especially the big sticks. We had great athletes trying out for big stick. We already had the good offensive players, and then in midfield we needed to find a bunch of players that could run with the Americans, run with the Australians, pick up loose balls, play defense, and most Canadian kids that can play offense. You know, they may not be a John Grant or Tommy Marichuk or Colin Doyle, but every lacrosse player that comes out for Team Canada can play offense. So we sat down, and with every player that was selected for Team Canada, I sat one-on-one with them, and we talked about how I saw their role on the team. Because you've got some players that are going to come in that are star players in their league, star players on their team, and they may have to accept a lesser role. So can you accept that? You know, you've been playing, you know, in a box lacrosse game, you play in the power play. Well, here you may not even see the power play. You may see it, roles change, but going in, do you accept this? And they all did, right? Including we had to change a little bit of how about our attack. We had to change a little bit about what Gary Gate did. Gary Gate would get the ball and go to net, and very successful throughout his whole career. So against USA, I wanted Gary to play more of a feeding game, because now you got the best defenseman in the world on you, and if you're 40 feet away from net, where's the best defenseman? He's 40 feet away from net. Can't double if another guy gets a goal in the net, because the U.S. are great at doubling the ball, tripling the ball. So and slides, but all of a sudden you take the guy away from the net, the second best defenseman, or maybe the best defenseman, best 2, on Gary Gate and John Grant, who are now 20, 30 feet away from net instead of going to net. So it allowed other players, you know, Sawicki, in that tournament was the leading goal scorer as the other attack person. And again, the reason he's there is Tommy Marichuk pulls a hamstring the very first game. Now we have other attack players, so we put Sawicki in there, and he becomes the leading goal scorer in the tournament, because the best players are playing a little bit further out, and they've changed their game, becoming more feeders than that. And then, you know, you watch the gold medal game. It was back and forth the first half. And also in the second half, we started getting more confidence, and we started getting more opportunities for scoring. And you know, and if you listen to the game tape, there are commentators are saying, "Geez, John Grant hasn't done much. Gary Gate hasn't done much." Well, they've done a lot for us in playing a team game. Other guys picked it up. Other guys were scoring, and the fourth quarter, they had to change their defense because all of a sudden we're getting too many goals from other players. The fourth quarter, Gary Gates' last game of the year, or last game of his career, scores four goals in the fourth quarter, because all of a sudden they had to change their defense. So we did something to them that no other team had ever done before. We made them adjust to us, where we've always, Team Canada's always adjusted to the U.S. and adjusted to the Australians and any other team we played. So the only thing that we really maintained was how to play defense, field lacrosse style, because we have to defend against the teams coming at us. But offensively, they had to adjust to us because we changed things that they had never seen before. They'd never seen Gary Gait not get the ball and 8 out of 10 times go to net. And he'd score a good portion. But what we thought was, if you look at the goal of how we score our goals, most of our goals were scored one-on-one. Well, in this final game, most of our goals were scored off ball, including Gary Gait. So it was all built up from '98 on how we envisioned the game, and it seemed like every tournament, more and more Canadians are coaching field lacrosse. So in 2006, we had an all-Canadian coaching staff. Before that, even back in the early years, there was always a U.S. influence of coach. And we went to an all-Canadian coaching and had the other teams adjust us. But we also had a lot of young guys on the team that could run. The big things are about field lacrosse, face-offs, loose balls, ball possession. And that team, when you look at that final game, we excelled in all three of those avenues against U.S., which was unheard of. Now, Gary was allowed to go to the net if he saw a good opportunity.
But he bought into the...
Yeah, but he didn't have to carry the team. Gary and John Grant Jr., they didn't have to carry the team and go get 5 goals each, 3 goals each to win. And that was, I think that was a huge accomplishment for the team, that the best player in the world bought into it. Right? Now, but we never restricted them from not going to net. We just said, let's share the ball. There's only one ball. And if we can get other guys scoring, you'll get your 3. And Gary ended up getting 4 in the fourth quarter. And what a way to go out for him. Now, we had great goaltending, Chris Sanderson. We had probably the best big stick in the world in Brody Murrell. Went down and, was noted in the NCAA as the best big stick. We had him on the team. That helped. And we had, all of a sudden, we went from being slashing, bang kind of defense to finesse. We had athletes back there, and all of them could run with the ball. All of them could pick up loose balls, and all could check. And then our midfielders, we picked up a lot of young guys that could run, that were fast. Chris Seller, Gavin Prout, and Colin Doyle. He's noted for indoor game and played well. Him and I didn't make the 2002 team, and we met after and did one-on-one with him, and I told him, we need you to run more. Indoor game, short spurts, but out here, you got to run the field. And Colin could run the field. So, so there was a lot of dedication from the players. I think the biggest thing that we had to do as coaches is be honest with them. What the expectations were, have one-on-one talks with them, and let them know where they stood on the team as a role, and listen to them. We listened to our man up. Well, who's the best player in the world? Gary Gait. Well, what do you think we should be doing on man up? And then him and Junior and Tom Marichuk, we would hash stuff around, and we'd say, okay, let's try it. So it wasn't just coaching was coaching down, but we coached from the bottom up too. We listened to Brody Murrell about what we should be doing. We listened to our face-off guy, Schneider, MVP for the tournament. Unbelievable. There were so many guys that played beyond their capabilities for our team, and you never heard them gripe about not getting enough playing time, not getting enough of this. It was a great team effort, and a great team. And as I kept telling the Canadian Lacrosse Association, when there were some big name players were invited to the 50 camp but didn't make the team, and Hall of Famers. But as I said to them, we only have one ball. If I have all you attack guys up there, we're not going to win. We're going to score 8, 9, 10 goals. You know, and I think it's the first time U.S. has ever held to less than 10 goals. They had 10 goals against us. And that was the first time they've ever had that least amount of goals. So we had the best team. And that was our goal, was to build the best team. And it took us 3 tries, but we finally got it. And, you know, we did something that no other team had done for 28 years, beat USA. I think where the only thing that part of my original concept was, and we did it a little bit, was we wanted to hold more development camps for young kids that are coming up. And we held I probably did about 1 in Ontario, 1 in BC, and a couple on the prairies. And I would bring in Paul Gate or Gary Gate or John Grant or the Star as the attraction. And the kids would just, and I'm talking, we went from little kids to adults at these camps. You know, we would, you know, Jim Burke out of Alberta, he held a couple, and we would go there and run camps for them, and we'd bring Paul in, and Paul would talk to the kids for an hour about how to shoot the ball, you know, and stuff like that. And the players, the star players for Canada, I could phone any one of them up, and they would drop whatever they're doing and come to a camp to help develop the game. That's the type of players that they were. You know, whether it was John Tavares or, you know, first time he played field lacrosse, all world, Midi, in '98. You know, they would, in '98, I remember that they would, our man up was, you got the Gates, you got John Tavares, you've got all the big guns that Canada's noted for. And who scores all the goals? Chris Gill. You know, because they didn't know him, and Chris is so smart inside that he would spring open and they would feed him, and he's one-on-one naked with a goalie, and we'd get a goal out of it, right? And no, it was the '98 game helped us for 2006 because of the attention that it brought to being an athlete and how close we got to winning a gold. And you just saw all the kids in the world wanted to be Stevie Toll all of a sudden in Canada playing big stick, which was phenomenal because that helped us in 2002, and it really helped us in 2006 when we won the World Games.